I'm excited to hear from you, hear your story, hear your why, anything you want to share. Like how did you get into this and what would you have told your younger self? Like people are watching who have kids who are interested in science and they don't know what to tell these kids. And the kids are thinking, well, maybe I'm not good at it. And, there's so much that we can talk about with this, but um, we'll let the conversation go where it goes.
Yeah, and talk about your organization and,
Please.
you know.
Black Women in Clinical Research, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I think I'm a part of that Facebook group and I'm watching the posts and the way you guys are loving up on each other, helping people write their resumes and CVs. And there's some dopeness going on in that group.
Yeah. All right, we're going live. Here we go. Hey, Mo.
Hey, Ricky. How you doing?
I'm good. The doctor is in.
It's true. We're in with a powerhouse group of women today. Like this gives me hope because when people ask me, well, what are you optimistic? What are you hopeful about with respect to cancer research and respect to Black health? And, we see so much that makes us feel, I think, a little bit defeated about our health. We see all these statistics and I'm especially regarding breast cancer, but when you meet women like this who are doing amazing things in their field, right? They're leaders, they're movers, shakers, they're being disruptive about this medicine and this science and this research, that you can't ask for more than that. So we're talking about it today, clinical research with the folks who are doing it and doing it well. So.
And Black women doing it, Mo. Black women are doing this research. I mean, we hear so much about fearing research and being afraid of it, but look at these beauties, these beautiful brainiacs that are actually doing this work. And we may not see them. We may not see them in when we go to the hospital, go to the doctor, but they're doing it and they're leading it. They founded an organization about it and they're helping each other grow and they're bringing more babies into this work. And it's just awesome to see. Awesome to see. Who wants to go first and say who you are? Danielle.
I can. Hello, everyone. And thank you so much, Ricky and Dr. Mo, for having me. My name is Danielle Mitchell. I am the CEO and founder of Black Women in Clinical Research. And I started Black Women in Clinical Research in 2019. And so it has changed my life. Black Women in Clinical Research is a company that I never expected to create, but I'm so thankful of the connections that I've made. And I want to grow. I want more members. We're 10,000 members strong, and we want to continue to grow. We want to continue to educate.
10,000. Say that again.
10,000. We are 10,000 members strong. Yes. In 2019, it was just me in this Facebook group, just sending people LinkedIn messages saying, hey, I started Black Women in Clinical Research. And I didn't know when I planted these seeds whether or not people would actually be receptive or even join Black Women in Clinical Research. So it all started with the Facebook group and we're here now and I'm just thankful to be here. Thank you so much.
I have to tell you, I am in that group and I have been stalking and fangirling and watching what's going on within the community and how inspiring the stories are and how when we share our stories and share what we know and talk about salaries and talk about, what's good and what's not so great in our careers, we're inspiring and liberating others to do the same thing. And I have watched it grow in awe and amazement. So, I mean, I'm just thrilled to have you here today. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm like feeling like a fangirl now that I know that you're in the group and that you've been there.
I know, it's great. It's awesome. So Bridget.
Yes. So my name is Bridget Chapatal. I'm a clinical research professional. I've mostly worked in oncology careers my whole career. And the funny thing about clinical research is when you talk to most people, I think you'll find that we all kind of like accidentally fell into it. I call it, I was blessed to fall into it. I mean, in college, I was a health science major. Didn't really know what I wanted to do with that. I am Nigerian by heritage. So of course you have to be a doctor, a lawyer, pharmacist, nurse. These are like the only approved careers that you could be a part of. And I knew that those didn't quite fit me. And so my very first job there right out of college, I ended up working for a clinical oncologist. And from there, he started doing research and I started learning about it. And I just realized that, wow, this is still a way that I can make an impact on science. And, I've pretty much been in the field ever since then, but it really wasn't until the pandemic in 2019 when I joined Black Women in Clinical Research, which I'm now one of the brand ambassadors. When we were able to see Danielle's vision, that it really helped to kind of, for the first time, connect so many Black women. I mean, and most of the time through my career, which is coming up on 20 years now, it's been kind of, I've been one of the few. And it literally was not until 2015 that I actually worked with my first Black female PI. There were actually two of them, but it's just literally like here or there, one of a few. And so this is the first time in my career that I've really been surrounded by, supported by, just in awe of so many women who look like me. And I really think that, it's really all to Danielle's vision. And I'm so grateful, to have have met her and to be a part of her vision.
Isn't that such a great feeling? Because
Yeah.
I know, when I was in grad school and I got a master's in molecular biology, I would go to the cancer research meetings and nobody looked like us. And you'd be the only one in these plenary sessions, the only one in the room, the only one in these labs and all the collaborative meetings. And it's a tough place to be, and when you find your sisters and you find your tribe, like that's awesome. And 20 years in it, girl, 20 where, 20 who, 20 what? Come on.
right out of elementary school, right?
Right, exactly. Doing test tubes on the playground. Come on.
Yeah. Wow. Jasmine.
Hi, I'm Jasmine. I'm also a clinical research professional. I haven't been in the industry as long as Bridget, but I definitely enjoy being in the industry. Just like Bridget said, clinical research kind of fell into my lap. It actually wasn't in my plans at all. Like upon graduation, I was a psychology major. So of course, as a psychology major, we look to become a therapist or something along that realm. But I actually wanted to be a medical doctor. But then I realized that just didn't align with who I was. And I was just like, what else can I do that could be impactful, whether it's behind the scenes or patient facing? I was like, I need to do something. And that's where clinical research came in. And actually, the year I guess fell into clinical research, Black Women in Clinical Research started. So I remember Danielle invited me to the group. And I think there are 20 members. And I was just like, wow, this needs to be bigger than just 20. And to think that we're at 10,000 now, and this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. I would also say I'm just thankful to be here, and I'm thankful for Danielle's vision because it has connected me with so many amazing Black women. And it's such a refresher to see people that look like us, whether it's patients or even just staff. It's just very refreshing to see us.
Wow. So you guys, earlier today, I was on a call with a bunch of health stakeholders talking about the new bill the new legislation, or what do you call it, guidance that the FDA is writing on clinical trials. And we were trying to figure out, poke holes in it to say, okay, what are you to make comments? I guess the comments are due in a couple of weeks. And so I was with all these really, smart people from pharma companies, from different advocacy groups, trying to figure out, what can they do better? And my comment was, first of all, it shouldn't be a guidance, right? It shouldn't be a guidance. It should be a mandate, right? About what percent, participation in clinical trials. And then also, to me, there was no language about the burden of disease. So, and no way to kind of quantify the impact. So if you think about it right now, for breast cancer, we have 3% participation in clinical trials. 0, goose egg, nothing. What does that mean, right? So, and to even make the participation mandate or guidance commensurate with the population, say there's 13% Black people in the country, should it be 13%? To me, that's not enough. That's not enough, because if Black women have a 41% higher mortality rate, and you guys have to do this math because that is way above my pay grade, what should the number be, right? If Black women have get triple negative breast cancer at 3 times the rate of white women, what should that number be? That number should be commensurate with the burden of the disease. It shouldn't be even the population. So how do we make better stuff happen for us? You guys are in it, and we're working really hard to get more Black women into with our When We Trial movement. But how do we change the ecosystem about this? You know what I mean? We need more of you around doing this work with us, or different, or different pharma companies or whoever that's doing this work. But But we need for people to think about it differently. Just the whole thing is wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely, I agree with what you're saying. So whatever we can't measure really can't be improved. And so if you're, having, let's say, for example, triple negative breast cancer trials, and you have an amount of Black women in the study that, does not reflect how many Black women are actually in the population that are affected with cancer, you are going to fall short on the goals of finding a medication or a treatment that will actually be effective. But I think, to answer your question, that, FDA needs to go a step further and really give strong directives to pharmaceutical companies and to sponsors on, exactly how they can go about supporting these measures. I mean, I don't necessarily think that, as we were kind of mentioning offline, these companies are really in it to make money. And yes, if they help along the way, then, that's great as well. But I really think that there needs to be a way to really kind of either incentivize them or to really, kind of make it something that they will really be able to fold into what they're doing in order to want to support these initiatives. So something stronger than a guidance. It really needs to be like a straightforward way in which we're going to give them a roadmap in order to, be able to meet those goals. And so I think that it's so important to have organizations like yours, organizations like Black Women in Clinical Research, be able to come to the table and really put our 2 cents in as well, because we know the things that will help our communities and can really, just be a part of that process and really kind of make sure that, we're holding them accountable to the things that we need. And so this is like a really critical time, I think, to really make our voices heard and to really, try to make sure that we're representing for our communities and making sure that we're actually, holding people to measurable. That's the thing in research too. It has to be measurable, right? The goals
Smart
have to
goals,
be,
right?
exactly. And so we need to keep those same principles when we're dealing with FDA, and especially around these diversity plans that they are, putting together.
Let me ask you this. And this is for anybody to answer. Let me play devil's advocate, I guess, in the sense that, and I always hate it when people do that, but I have to do it because what is it about representation that truly matters to the industry and to the patients? Does it? First question, does it truly matter? Right? And if it does, what does that do? What is it? What is the measurable impact of our representation on these numbers? And it's a tough question, it's speculative, and I get it. But does representation really matter? Or patients, because I mean, from the physician standpoint, patients sitting there looking at me like this, whether I'm Black, white, green, whatever, they don't trust medicine. They don't trust white coats. They don't, you know what I mean? And so my representation doesn't matter until another hour and a half later, after I've talked about my family history and how my family don't like doctors either, and how, and it takes so much to get there. So does representation matter? And then how can it matter?
So I can answer that. Representation matters so much. If you can't relate to the person who is talking to you about your treatment, you're not going to be receptive. You're just going to think, okay, well, this person is just trying to give me anything. They don't care about me. They don't care about my family. They don't care about either my issues that I've had when it comes to my medical care. So, a lot of times I hear people talking about, let's increase the diversity in clinical trials, but they have to realize that it's connected to the clinical research workforce. If you do not have people that the patients can see, that look like them, so they can get to the point where they feel comfortable. And it's not just with, Black women, it's with other cultures as well. If you are Latino and you're going to a clinic, you want to see other people that are Latino that speak your language. So every culture, every race, everyone needs someone that looks like them, where they can feel like, we're on the same level. They're talking to me based upon the same experience. We share a common factor. And I feel like that's very important. And we don't realize, and this, just like Ricky was saying with statistics, when it comes to diverse people that actually work in the clinical research workforce, it's only 13%. So that number is low. And so we have to realize that it's connected. And once we can realize that, we need to increase the people that's actually working in clinical research, because we're hidden. A lot of people don't know about us. People don't know that there's 10,000, Black women behind the scenes that are participating and monitoring these clinical trials. So I think once we think of it differently, and a lot of companies start recruiting people from diverse backgrounds and not from the same, you can't keep recruiting people from the same area and wondering why I don't have any diverse people. You have to think outside the box and recruit people from, I'll put a plug in, from Black women in clinical research, but, going out to different organizations that don't have anything to do with clinical research, because people don't know about it. And there are so many educated members in the group. We have doctors that can't get into clinical research. So we have all these people that are educated, but they're getting rejected when it comes to clinical research. And so it's a whole process that has to be changed from, from HR to the people that's higher up. It needs to be some difficult conversations, but I know once we can get to the point where we can address these issues, then we'll see a change. Then our numbers will increase. But we have to break down those barriers. We have to provide that language so people can understand, so they know that they can trust us. Everyone that is Black has, I shouldn't probably speak for everyone, but just with my family, I know that we have trust issues because of Henrietta Lacks, because of the Tuskegee syphilis study. When I told my family that I was participating in clinical research, they said, what about the Tuskegee syphilis study? Like, why would you want to be involved in this? Because I want to make a change. I want to impact. I have people in my family. My father has high blood pressure. He took the medicine and he had adverse reaction to the medicine. But that's because not that many Black people actually take the ACE inhibitors. So the medicine is not designed to help us if we don't participate in the clinical trials.
Say that again. Medicine, say that again.
The medicine is not designed to help us if we do not participate in clinical trials. If we don't participate in the beginning, we're going to find out at the end when we're going to the doctor, when we're prescribed the medicine. That's not the point. You want to have an adverse reaction to any drug. So the time that you want to, is in the beginning, in the beginning stages of the process when the drug is going through the clinical trial.
And what do we say to the people who are worried about that very thing, the experimental component of it? How do we, what language do you use, I guess, to help people understand the safeguards and the way the trials are structured that protects you if you do have adverse events, and if you have concerns of that nature, and if you are worried about being another Tuskegee, what's the language that you all use to explain and sort of help alleviate some of those fears?
Well, I can answer that. I mean, one of the things that I really try to help people understand, because I've worked for the institutional review boards in the past, which are the actually ethical groups of people that are, their main purpose is just to actually look at the clinical research, make sure that it's actually going to be able to answer the question that the doctor is trying to look for. So what that means is, the doctor can't just have you in a clinical research study and say, I'm just going to find out everything I want to about you. No, they have to come up with a question that they're trying to answer. The ethical board looks at all of the research ahead of time and makes sure that it looks as though it is going to be able to answer those questions. They then have to submit their research to the FDA, and the FDA looks over to make sure that it looks okay as well. But I mean, even before that, there are just multiple steps that a doctor who wants to do research, who is called actually investigator or a PI, as you'll hear them called, they actually have to go through multiple levels of review by people outside of their institution, outside of them, before they can even start the research. And the main two questions that they're trying to, that they're going to have to answer are, number one, is this treatment or this product safe? And number two, does it work? And so that is the whole point of clinical research. So every step along the way, those are the two questions that are being examined, being looked at by multiple layers of people. And so by the end of that process, you will have a component that, even though it has not been tested fully in people, they have done all the underlying research. And so at the point where it comes, as Danielle was saying, to test it on people, if we are creating a drug that we say is going to help, all people with breast cancer or all women with breast cancer, then we need for all women with breast cancer to be able to take that medication that has been, tested and studied, and actually try it out and see how it's going to impact these people. So that way we can tell, does the dose need to be higher in certain people? Does it need to be lower in certain people? Does it work better in certain people or not work better in certain people? And so, I just try to break it down as, these are the steps in the process. These are the two questions that people that these doctors have to answer. And along the way, there are many steps put in place to ensure safety. A person who is taking part in research at any point has a phone number that they can call if they feel like something, is not going the way that it should be, or if they feel as though they're not getting the attention or the proper care that they need from their doctor. They're able to just call that ethical board that I mentioned. So there are many different points along the line ahead of time, but even being part of a clinical research study is voluntary, meaning your doctor can't make you stay in it. They can't take away your, whatever other treatment you might be, able to get. If you don't want to participate in the research, it's completely up to you. And so, with all of those different safeguards in place, I know I've participated in clinical trials before, as have, several, people here, on this panel. And so that's just kind of what I share, just my personal experience, and then also what I've, witnessed and been a part of working behind the scenes in the industry.
Such a great explanation of research. So thank you for that. So, just breaking it down, and not only did you explain how it works, which is great, and that they're testing for safety and whether it works or not, but I think also a lot of people are touching it. You can't just like get away with those. How many people were involved in the syphilis study? I don't know. I think it was like, whatever, so many nurses doing it, right? So we know that now so many people have to touch it, including the FDA, for it to even happen. So it is safe, and it is safe. And I think we're finding in cancer research, we have better outcomes for people who are in a trial, because you guys explain what goes on with the patient when you're there. I mean, how closely are you watching those patients? How close are patients supervised? You're getting better care.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know when I've gone through the whole learning about the clinical research, a lot of times you're getting monitored more closely versus your standard of care. So, you're seeing the doctors and you're seeing the team on a consistent basis, a lot of times more times than you would if you were just going to your, a checkup. So, you're being monitored closely, test results, you're getting all of the information that you would need to improve your health, and you're learning things about your health at the same time. So, I know it's very beneficial, but I know we have to have those tough conversations. We have to break it down to the patients that are participating in clinical trials, going over the consent. What is a consent? And a lot of times the language in the consent is not where someone who doesn't have any type of science background can really understand. So I think before, and this is just my thought process, before a person is going to participate in a clinical trial, they should have learned about a clinical trial when they're at the clinic. This information should be shared way before, because a lot of times people already have a sense of, fear going to the doctor. So don't approach people about a clinical trial when they're in the clinic. Let them know and educate them before it even gets to the point where you want to tell them, hey, we have a clinical trial for you. So I think we have to change our thought process and not immediately introduce clinical trials to people, but educate people on their overall health and let them know these are some of the options. And what I've noticed, it seems like clinical research is removed from medicine, it's not, it's like it's separate.
Different thing. Yeah.
Now you're coming down my street, because you can design the best trials in the world. You can provide access for patients. You can say, you know what, we can be at the table, so we're not on the menu. But if the physicians are not discussing this with the patients, if the rapport is not there, if the trust is not there, the trial doesn't happen. It's not successful. The enrollment, the accrual is not successful, especially in these populations. And I think that you hit the nail on the head, in that the research is removed from the medical, the training, right? The training that we receive, you got just enough time to learn everything to keep a person alive and to pass your exams and to get to the next step. So they push you through the assembly line to your residency. You learn just enough about your specialty to get out there and start your job. And then you figure out how to do all the coding and all the things, and you learn just enough. And there isn't that comprehensive focus on research. I want to circle back, and then we can talk about this too, but to the IRB, to the consent. Right, because I'm chair of the IRB at my hospital, and the consent, we have to read it. It has to be at a 6th grade reading level. What else can we do? What else needs to be done to make consent easier? Do you think videos? Is there another way that can help patients understand the consent process better?
Mo, explain IRB one more time.
Sure thing. Well, Rich did a great job of it, but the Institutional Review Board is a group that is convened by the institution that is responsible for approving the trials that happen at that institution. They have to review the nature of the study, who's going to be involved, how do the consent forms look, what happens to the information, is it protected, is it de-identified, meaning it doesn't have your names and identifiers on it, how is that information stored, who does it get shared with, how often is it shared, who do the adverse reactions get reported to, and how often. And there's so many moving parts about a trial that this board is responsible for saying this trial meets all of the standards and the criteria for us to offer it at our institution.
Great.
So they're the standard bearer at the institution. And
they're accountable for what's
yeah,
going on. So
and they have to read and approve that consent form, all that consent, they got to do it. And we still don't understand the consent forms.
Well, I will say, to your point, another thing to add about the research is not only does the Institutional Review Board approve the research, but they actually have to review it on a continuing basis, at least once a year. And through that time, they're looking at all of the negative things that have happened to people, while they're on the study. Because I think, and just as an aside, it is true that, you might have an adverse reaction, which is, you might get sick from a drug that you're taking, but that's the same as even if you were taking a Tylenol. If you turn the bottle over to the back, exactly, any drug, you turn that bottle to the back, it's got a list of these things might happen. So some of the things are expected, and the IRB is, making the determination of, okay, is this a reasonable amount of things to be expected? But then they also get to review the data every year. So if something in there that is actually, if something unexpected happens, they would actually be notified about that in real time. But kind of going back to your question about what can we do about consent forms, I definitely am a proponent of having images in a consent form. I mean, when I was a research coordinator seeing my patients, I would pull out that dry erase marker and get to drawing on the board. And so why can't we have images like that in a consent form? If you're explaining how a drug is targeting a cancer cell, okay, here's a big circle, that's the cancer cell. Here's the receptors on the outside, the drug is coming in. And, I would just try to visualize it because I'm a visual person. So that, I felt like helped me explain it better and then also help them understand it a little better. But also, when you talk about things like that, also languages, if a person's first language is not English, then, there are rules in place that tell you, how much of it has to be translated, how much of it doesn't. I would say that you would want to have it translated 100% of the document into the language that the person could understand. But even sometimes if a person speaks English, medical jargon and medical terminology, medical words, it's like a whole different language sometimes. Right. So, something I would really like to see, and something that I actually, try to work on with patients, is just really taking any big word that you could use and just break it down. I'm a really big fan of plain language and of really just trying to use, just the word that can help somebody understand something versus just this big fancy, medical word, because, but I think that takes training doctors because they're used to thinking and speaking in those terms, and they might after a while kind of forget that not everybody understands that. And also when you're scared, you've been told that you're sick, that comprehension level, it goes down even lower.
Yeah, I told my medical student today, I said, you have to unlearn. I know all of your training is to learn this language. I said, but you have to unlearn it. Because if I tell a patient they have invasive ductal carcinoma, grade 3, ER/PR positive, HER2 negative, they look at me like this. And then if I say it's like a can of Pillsbury crescent rolls and you pop the can and the dough pops out, that's what invasive means. It means the seal around the can or around the duct is broken. And that's why we have to check the next place it would go under your arm, because the seal is broken. And they say, oh, okay. Right. And now they understand what surgery they need. Like I talk in food because everybody knows food. I measure things in food. It could be a small salad crouton, could be a lima bean, it could be a pea, could be a cherry, like whatever it is, whatever the food is, like people know food. But you're absolutely right. We have to learn how to translate better what we know, because what good is knowing it if you can't explain it?
Can't explain it. I can't explain it. I actually, on this call today, when we're talking about this FDA thing, there were some Latinas on the call, and they were talking about even when they translate the informed consent into Spanish, a lot of them still can't read. And that a lot of immigrants can't read. They don't have, they don't even have their own language mastered enough to read. And so you're sitting there explaining this to a patient, and you give them this document, and even though it's in Spanish, it still doesn't work for them. So it's really trying to figure out where that patient is and talking to them where they need to be talked to, in the way that they need to be talked to, where they they hear it, they understand it, and they feel trust. Because the research that we did last year about kind of the barriers or why are Black people afraid, the fear is based on lack of knowledge. And if you think about situations where you didn't understand something, it was totally new to you, you were going into a place that you didn't know, you were afraid. And when you found out what it was and you were educated about it, the fear went away. So that's what we're just trying to do, even with When We Trial, is like take the fear away by teaching people what they need to know and saying, you did such a great job, but explaining it. So, that's what we just need more of and more of and more of. We can't say it enough to get people comfortable, to get rid of that fear of just not knowing.
And I think that's too where something like having, a person who is part of the research team that looks like you can provide just that little bit of comfort and familiarity. I mean, I know, there are certain cultural things that we just get, like we don't leave our people alone in the hospital and, different things like that. So it might even be something as simple as, if somebody's there by themselves, you might want to say, okay, well, when you come back next time, would you like to bring a family member, your husband, one of your children, something like that, you might just be able to culturally pick up on that would make the patient more comfortable. And then you're able to really kind of share that information in a way that they can receive it.
So when Bridget was talking about the consent, it made me think of an idea, and I don't even know if this could be something that they could do. But when you mentioned pictures, Bridget, I was thinking the consent needs to be interactive. So like if, say, for example, if a patient's reading the consent, maybe they can type in where they have questions about, or, like if we were drafting a consent a lot of times and we need someone else to review, we would put a comment and say, can you explain this further, or can this language be added? So maybe that interactive piece needs to be for the patients as well, because if they're reading the consent and they don't understand something, maybe they can go ahead and either, put a little comment box and say, can you explain further? Or maybe certain words that's in the consent at the time they're reading the consent, they can click on it and it can give them a definition. So I think maybe being interactive or having the consent set up, because people understand things a different way. Some people can read, the consent and be fine, but other people might need that extra to give them, that information. And when you were talking about the people that were Hispanic, maybe they can have consents that's audio, I don't know if that's possible, but if it could be in Spanish, and a person who, may not be able to read Spanish can listen to it.
Right. You guys, we haven't really explained what informed consent is. Can somebody just explain what that is for our audience?
Well, sure. I can go ahead. Oh.
I'm like, Jasmine. Hey, girl. Hey.
Yeah, Jasmine. She's over there being quiet.
No, not at all. I actually was formulating like comments just off of what Danielle said, because I also thought about the interactive piece, and also just
I love that.
Just really getting into the community so they know that we're here, and like when they go to the doctor's office, that isn't the first time they hear about a clinical trial. So that's what I was just thinking about. That's all.
It can't be the first time. When you need one, it's too late.
Exactly.
Right. I think we should.
I would say that consent process and consent. Well, so there's consent form, there's a consent process. Really, the thought of it is that, giving consent is basically giving your permission to be part of a research study. I mentioned earlier that it is voluntary, meaning you choose if you want to be part of research. You can choose if you don't want to be a part of research, but you do have to sign paperwork, just kind of like how you do with anything. But it's not just the signing of the paperwork that should be the focus that says that you're in the study. It's really supposed to be a process. So, like Jasmine was just saying, you're learning about your disease, you're learning about the treatments for your disease ahead of time. And then when it comes time to actually speak with your doctor and learn about what options that you have, you'll actually sign a document that explains there's several different elements that it has to contain, but it will definitely tell you, what kind of disease you have to have in order to be a part of the study. It'll tell you what the treatment is. It will tell you what the plan of the treatment is. So if you have to come in once a week, do you have to come in twice a week? Are you going to be getting an injection? Are you going to be taking pills at home? It'll just tell you all of the instructions of what you have to do to be a part of this research study. Because the main thing about research is at the end, of the study, after everybody has taken part in the study, we want to be able to look at all of the results and compare them to each other. So the only way that's going to work is if everybody pretty much does the same thing while they're on the study. So they're asking you, do you agree to do these things? Do you think that you can do these things? Do you think you can follow this plan? They tell you all of the possible, side effects that would happen when you're on the drug that they know of. They'll also tell you, some of maybe the benefits that could happen on the treatment. Sometimes there's not really a benefit to certain drugs, and they'll tell you that if that's the case. Maybe we just want to compare it to something that we already know works to see, does this work better? But yeah, they'll also give you that number that I mentioned if you have a problem while you're on the study. They'll tell you who your data is being shared with. So all of these different elements are a part of this document, but they should also be a part of the conversation that you have with your research team and with your doctor. And at the end of that, you sign it. And so that is called giving your consent to be a part of the study. And you can take that back at any time that you decide that you don't want to participate anymore.
Great.
And also in the informed consent process, how most coordinators do, like they explain, all about the trial. They also should give the patient time to ask questions and to bring it home, like if they have children or like their husband, just to see their thoughts. Because 9 times out of 10, if your children or if your husband doesn't agree, that consent approval is gone.
Yeah.
Right.
Also just making sure like they are really comfortable with it, not like forcing them to sign because you need an extra patient.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know our
Exactly.
research shows that doctors are not asking Black women to participate in trials, right? We know that. But also, when the family member or the patient brings the conversation up to a doctor, I want to do a trial, they still walk away from that conversation not feeling equipped to make a decision or to even defend it to their family. Because their doctor doesn't spend enough time with them explaining it. So they go home and say, hey, mom, I'm going to do a trial. No, you're not. You're going to get the sugar pill and die. And they don't know enough to feel confident to talk about it. So we have to, you guys are so critical to this process. And you're giving us, I'm going to use all these little snippets of videos to put on when we trial, because you're educating in such a good way to help break it down for us, break it down. So trust is only going to come with knowledge, with learning, with education.
It's tough though. Let me ask you guys this, because when a patient is diagnosed, like I know, they hear want, you have cancer,
right,
and they don't hear anything else after that, right? And so I encourage my patients. One, we talk about it prior to. They bring their questions, they bring their family member. We can zoom in some other folks if they, if you got research, whatever it is, you bring it with you. But when it's the optimal time to have some of these conversations, because the time might not be right when you're trying to wrap your mind around what's the ER, PR, and HER2, and you read it, you're like, per, and her, what does that mean? To bring this subject up. And I think that for our focus groups, really talking to our breasties about when is the time that they're ready to receive and even contemplate some of this could better help inform physicians, because the physicians are, of course, they're overworked trying to get to the next room or whatever. They're trying to answer the questions, make sure the patient understands the surgery that they need, the doctors that are involved, and then they're out the door. Right. And then the nurse is like, so we got this trial, right?
Right.
And it doesn't go the way we need it to go, and we don't close the loop on it, and the whole thing just comes unraveled. So from breasties and from you all as researchers, when would you say that patients feel is the best time to start to have some of these questions, to have some of these conversations?
So I would say it should start in the community. It shouldn't be at the clinic. It shouldn't be, when you're going to the hospital, but being present in the community during either health fairs, church. My church here in Michigan, my pastor had it to where if we wanted the COVID vaccination, we could go right outside of the church and get our, either our COVID vaccination, or if we wanted to have a COVID test. So I think incorporating that into the community and realizing that healthcare is a part of everything, and it shouldn't just be discussed at the clinic, at the doctor's office, but being involved at the beauty salon, the barbershop, in those social environments where people feel comfortable. You have to meet people where they are and not really bombard them when they're coming to the doctor's office, because they're already on high alert. They already are afraid of what the doctor might say. So meet people in comfortable social environments and talk to them about their health. That's when people are receptive.
Right. I love that. Healthcare is a part of everything and it should be everywhere,
Right.
you know? And you know what, why is it that our families don't talk about health? Why is it?
It's
We
scary.
feel afraid and shame, you know, like especially for me, and I've told you this, Ricky, before, breast cancer runs in our family. But
Right.
it wasn't until my grandmother had breast cancer that my aunt started to say, you know what, I had a lump that I had removed. So I think it's about shame. A lot of times people are afraid to mention any type of health issues that they're going through, almost as a sense like it's a sign of weakness if you share that information. But you know, it's important for you to share that information with your family so that everyone can be on high alert, so that we can early detect breast cancer and go ahead and get our breast exams. And you know, it's just important part. And I know that a lot of Black families don't have these conversations, and I know it's difficult for people to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something we need to talk about if we want to stop the cycle as well. That's like my mom having breast cancer and my grandma having breast cancer, but nobody tells me so I don't get screened at an earlier age. So it's
Right.
definitely a tough conversation, but it definitely needs to be had if it's something that we want to stop in the future. So you know the signs, you know what you need to do, you know how to research more things like more symptoms and things like that. But it just needs to be a discussion so it can be prevented in the future. And just to know if it's in your family bloodline. So when you reach, let's say 35, you need to go have your mammogram.
True. I didn't know my mother died of ovarian cancer at 29 till I was 29, you know, and it's a conversation that we should have been having all along. But I find that, you know, what we don't know, we don't like to discuss. And, you know, and I say it's two things in Black families, especially
Right.
that we don't talk a lot about because and one is money and two is health.
Mhm.
Right, because we've always had to make ends meet and we don't necessarily understand the how finances work. And this is the generalization, but growing up in, at least in my family, we just barely had enough and we had the money to do what we needed to do, but we didn't talk a lot about things like investing and saving and the principles of money and balancing checkbooks and things like that. You didn't talk about it. God's going to provide and don't ask for nothing when we go to the store, you know, and like health, same thing, something down there. So and so, you know, had the sugar. We didn't find, you know, Nana went to the hospital and came out. We
Right.
didn't know what
Right.
she had done. So how do we start to have that conversation? What can people do or say? Like, are there tips that you would give to people who might be watching to help them, you know, have that conversation with their loved ones? They're having cookout, Memorial Day weekend. You know, how do we talk about this stuff?
I mean, I think that really a good example of kind of ways to kind of shift the narrative on things like this is mental health. So I know in previous generations, you know, you could never say that there was a member of the family to this, or, you know, it was just something that was just so taboo. But now it's been brought out into the open. It's been, you know, made to seem as it's just been made, you know, more accessible. It's just something that people speak about freely and there's no shame attached to it. It just is what it is. And so even though, you know, health conditions might hold a little bit of shame, you know, maybe people might think I got diabetes or I got heart disease, you know, because of my habits, you know, maybe I was smoking and that's why I caught cancer. I think that we need to similarly remove the shame and the stigma from those sorts of conditions and really just help people understand, you know, this is how your body works. This is how it breaks down in certain ways. And these are the options that you have in order to, you know, restore your health or to fix it. I mean, it's really just that cut and dried. I think for all of us that work in the scientific field, I mean, we pretty much see it just like that. I mean, nobody's looking to blame anybody. Nobody's looking to, you know, hold anybody's, you know, feet to the fire. We're just trying to help. And so I think when people really realize that there's help out there, especially for a lot of these diseases, that when they are caught early, you really actually do have a much better chance of recovery. Our job is to really just educate people as much as we can and as early as we can and as often as we can so that, you know, we can, you know, help them to understand that there actually is help. I think that a lot of times when people, you know, they kind of know that something is wrong, but they don't want to confront it, it's because they have that fear that they're not going to be able to help me anyway. So, you know, I'll just keep ignoring it. But if people are actually, you know, educated and know that, you know, by having, you know, your colonoscopy when you're supposed to, or by doing your breast self-exams at home, you can actually prevent or reverse a lot of these conditions. You know, I think that's the piece that is missing, and that you know, a lot of the efforts that your organization does and One Way Trial is just helping people to kind of understand those factors, and that they actually do have the power to improve their own health.
They do, and you have to, but you have to get over the fear. I'm dealing with a family right now. Today, the mom, the son, the 40-year-old son has colon cancer, never had a colonoscopy before. The 89-year-old mom today got diagnosed with colon cancer, and the son in between has all the same symptoms that both of them had and won't get tested. He's afraid. Now, part of it is because he's the caregiver for the mom. And so he feels like I have to focus on her right now, but he's sitting on a time bomb from the same, they all have the same symptoms. Now, 6 months ago, had they ever talked about those symptoms, the three of them together? No, they didn't talk about it. So they all had, you know, rectal bleeding, backache, all the symptoms of colon cancer, but nobody talked about it in a way that they could say, gosh, I have that. Well, you have that. Well, we should get checked out. So now we have 3 generations of, I'm hoping to God the son doesn't have colon cancer, but he's got all the symptoms. And now, like, how do you force those conversations in families and feel like, say, you know, the caregiving thing, we all have this sort of nurturing mindset, you know, all of us as Black people trying to take care of somebody else, right? But how do you let people know that if you don't take care of yourself, you can't help anybody?
I
And
would
how
say,
many families is this happening in, right?
yeah, I would say that, you know, we don't have to be the strongest person. We don't have to carry, you know, and I think a lot of people, especially when it comes to Black people, we feel like we have to be so strong. We have to be strong for everybody else. But I feel like we have to start putting ourselves first. And, you know, like you said, if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anyone else.
Can't take care of your
So,
mama or your son, right?
yeah, so I would say breaking that wall down and realizing that your health is important, and it has to be, you know, it has to be on the forefront. Like you have to go get your checkups. All of this, I know it can be scary, but if you talk to people, if you do this early on, anytime you have something that's off with your body, don't ignore it. I know there's so many people in my family that have ignored any
Ignore
type
it.
of, they ignore it. They're just like, okay, well, it'll go away. Don't tell yourself that it'll go away. And I think, you know, holding your family accountable, like, you know, my mom, for example, I'm like, Mom, have you had your breast exam? You know, like I stay on my mom, and you know, I'm like, okay, when was the last breast exam? When was the last time you went to, you know, the gynecologist? Like you know, hold your family accountable, because you want to see your family around. So be comfortable with asking your family those questions, because you want to see them there. You don't want to be where you didn't mention, you know, something to your loved one, and now because you didn't mention it, now they might be dealing with something. So holding your family accountable, telling your family, if you know, if there's something that I'm doing or some type of symptom, hold me accountable. Like making sure that we are here for one another, because we want our family to be around.
Yeah.
I think the other thing with that too is what was I going to say? Being accountable to each other, for each other, like you mentioned. So we will show up for other people, right? We might not show up for ourselves, but if we couple our health to someone else's, if we lean a little, if we can show some vulnerability and help other people to keep tabs on us, it encourages that vulnerable conversation. Oh, and the next point I was going to make was that when things are caught early, the treatments are many times, most times, less severe, shorter surgeries, less pain. You got a polyp that can be removed in the colonoscopy. Even stage 0 colon cancer can be removed through a polypectomy. It doesn't have to be, you know, major surgery and an ostomy and all the things. And I think helping people to see that and reinforcing that early detection means many times less intervention, less surgery, less pain, less loss of
no
job,
chemo,
and all
maybe.
the things, right? And I don't know that we stress that enough, because as soon as you hear cancer, you think the worst. You think chemo, radiation, surgery, everything. And earlier is better.
No, it doesn't have to be that way. I think, and you know what? I always go back to love. What is love? What is loving someone? Loving someone isn't taking them to the hospital. Loving someone is talking to them about what their, you know, what their her story is. What's her story? What's your his story? What's your family dealing with? Like, to me, that's what love is. Love isn't being the caregiver when your mom is really sick. You know what I mean? Love is talking about it and helping your kids and helping other people know what's going on in your family so they can see what they're up against and learning from that. And to me, it's, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that one of the things, oh, I'm sorry to cut you off, is just that
No, go ahead.
you know, you would die for your family, you would die for your kids, especially as Black woman, you would die for, you know, but will you live for them? You know, will you do the things that it takes to actually live and be here for them? So that's, you know, so very important as well. And I think, you know, in coupling kind of health education and health awareness behaviors, that introducing clinical trials as an option, you know, just kind of putting it on the table and helping people understand that that is another alternative that is out there, and that it is in fact actually helping to find new treatments, you know, for people that may not exist, you know, putting that out there. I know that people, you know, you can kind of appeal to someone's selflessness in that way, and kind of, I try to look at the flip side of things. So yes, you know, what happened to Henrietta Lacks, you know, was very regrettable. You know, her cells were taken without, you know, her permission. But, you know, from that, you know, we've been able to find the cures and treatments for so many different diseases. And so, you know, so that her contribution is not in vain, you know, we can actually kind of follow that model now in a voluntary way and be a part of research that can, you know, find the cures, especially when people have family history of diseases, you know, really being able to doctors to study that and see what it is about that particular family that is causing that disease to, you know, come back generation after generation. I mean, that right there could save generations of your family. I mean, that not every clinical trial is a treatment. Sometimes it's just observation, studying, just trying to figure out what the genetic lock and key is that's causing that. So, you know, if you have a family history of cancer, but you don't have cancer yet, you still can be a part of a clinical trial to try to figure out about your clinical, you know, history and your family's history. So there are all sorts of different ways to make a difference, ways to make an impact, you know, but it first starts with making sure that you are healthy yourself. And then it kind of goes from there.
Yeah. Yeah. I did a clinical trial on Monday. And basically it was to, they took blood, or took some blood work, I had to pee in a cup, and that was it. It was a day-long trial, but it was basically to evaluate my DNA as a survivor versus a white woman's DNA as a survivor, to look at the cellular difference between Black and white breast cancer. But it was a one-day thing. I got $25 to pay for my gas back and forth, and it was so easy to do. You know what I mean? And it's on our Facebook page if you want to join it, if you're in the DC area. But I can't, give me another one, bring it. I think we can't do enough work to advance our science. And frankly, as a survivor, you know, the standard of care drugs didn't work for me. I took TAC, I took the Red Devil, I took all that stuff, and my cancer came back. And I had to go on experimental drugs to save myself. But so we know the drugs aren't working. We have to do this work. We have to get the drugs, better drugs for our people. You know, we're not gonna, and frankly, any chemo you take is a clinical trial in your body. You don't know what's going to work or not.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I think it's so important just to piggyback on what you're saying. I mean, the same way that like a baby would have more in common with, you know, like a toddler than they would with like an older person or a teenager, the same way that women have more in common with women than they do with men. You know, there are shared factors, you know, ancestry, physical environment, cultural differences that, you know, make changes to our genes in such a way that, you know, a white woman and a Black woman could have, you know, a different outcome to a medication, you know, so it's not the skin color that is causing the change. It's not race, because that's not a biological factor, but there are, you know, shared experiences, shared, you know, things about our lives that could make you more likely to react to treatment in a certain way that is different from somebody who doesn't share those factors. And, you know, if we're creating a treatment that we say is going to help to cure people, you know, we have to see how it works in the people that we're trying to give it to. That's just the bottom line. And so, you know, if we don't show up to participate, you know, like Danielle was saying earlier, when we take the drug, it may work it may not work. It may, kind of work, maybe not as well as the people that they've tried it on. You just don't know. So to give ourselves the best possible, chance of getting the best possible treatments, we need all kinds of people to take part in clinical research. But most importantly, when we know that disease is impacting a certain population in a really high way, we definitely need people from that community and that population to take part in the research so that we can, save future generations of people.
Absolutely. And for the people who are like, they believe the body can heal itself, right? And they don't want those toxic drugs and they don't want these things, and they feel like, what, my body can heal itself through food, and through food is medicine. And I think there's some validation that we need to do as a healthcare community to honor those beliefs. But when I talk to those patients, I say, okay, if you believe that God is going to heal you this cancer, you believe that your body can heal itself, why don't you think it can heal itself from the effects of radiation? Why don't think you can heal it? Why don't you think it can heal itself from the some of the side effects of chemotherapy, right? Why are we putting limits on what your body can do and how it can heal? And I think we have to meet people where we are with their beliefs, because people have a lot of deep rooted and deep seated beliefs, especially in our culture, about what medicine is and looks like and where it should come from. Also, a lot of myths about what chemo is and isn't, and myths about clinical trials. So, are there myths that you hear over and over again that you would like to dispel? Because I always like to include a couple of these, because people are watching, believe it or not, in 2022, year of our Lord, they're still believing and thinking some of the same things that we were told many years ago. So anything you can think of, please feel free to share it.
I'm just going to say one thing before someone shares one of the myths. Stay off of TikTok. Please do not get your medical advice from TikTok. TikTok is not the the answer for everything. So, there's so many different myths on TikTok alone. I mean, I could go through some of them. I receive them a lot of times from family members who send it to me. Maybe because I'm in clinical research, they send it to me. I'm really not sure. But my inbox blows up with all of the different myths about, the vaccine. The vaccine is going to change your DNA. That's another one that I receive a lot of times. Let's see. The vaccine is going to cause autism. So those are two of the ones that I know that I've seen a lot, and I don't know if anyone else wants to share.
I know one that I see a lot is that people in clinical research might receive a placebo or sugar pill. And that is really not true, because what the whole point, like I mentioned before, of research is to find out is something safe and does it work? And when we say does it work, we mean, does it work better than what we already know works? Or in, Ricky's case, does it work better than what didn't work for her? So the whole point is not to give you something that is not going to work. At worst, what you'll get is just, this, what we call standard of care, which is, okay, if somebody has cancer, I give them chemo A. Okay, so you might get chemo A, or you might get this new chemo that we're trying that we think will work better than chemo A. So at the end of it all, you're not any worse off than you would have been if you just went to a regular doctor and just got the chemo A. But you have the opportunity that maybe something else will work better than you. So there's no sugar pill, there's no placebo. When it comes to clinical research, that when it comes to clinical research, that's just a myth that I think has gone on and on and on, and is one of the reasons why people are afraid to take part in research. Another one that I've heard is that and it's not so much a myth that's out there, but it's just, I think, things that people have in their mind, that your primary care doctor knows all about clinical trials, and if they think it's best for you, they will offer it to you. I think Dr. Mo mentioned earlier that through all of her training, she was just taught enough to move to the next level and to be able to keep people alive and help people get better. They're not teaching doctors about clinical trials. They don't know that much about it. They would have to be personally interested and take their own time to learn it, or decide early in their career that they want to be the kind of doctor who only does clinical trials. You sort of have to choose. And so, if you want to be part of a clinical trial, you have to bring it up to your doctor. And you may even have to connect with groups like When We Trial to find out exactly what kind of clinical trial would work for the disease that you have. And you would have to advocate for yourself, bring that up to your doctor, and then get connected. If your doctor's not able to, you would have to get connected with, doctors and scientists who would be able to help you. So, it's not necessarily that your PCP is going to be the one to bring it up to you. Even if it would work for you, you have to advocate for yourself.
Bridget, you are like talking our website.
No.
So
So funny.
thank you so much. Thank you
I'm
so much.
loving it. Loving it.
Wow. So you guys, you're doing such great work, and we want to get more of you in the world too. So how can people find you and get more information and join your, make your 10,000, 20,000?
We are on
6,000.
Facebook. We are on LinkedIn. You can go to bwicr.com for more information. We have chapters. We have partnered with a lot of CROs and pharmaceutical companies, and it's just the beginning. But we want to create a pipeline so that members can connect with the different CROs so that we can be in these roles. And so when it comes to these decisions and patients need, someone to advocate, there's someone that looks like them that can help them, so it's so important to have that clinical research workforce piece in place when we're talking to people about the increasing diversity in the clinical trial population.
Great. So bwicr.com.
Yep, standing for Black Women in Clinical Research.com. We're on TikTok. I'm not going to dance though, but there's no dancing on the Black Women in Clinical Research. Well, not from me. Andrika, one of our admins, she's a good dancer, so we let her dance. But yes, please join us because we want to make a difference. We want to make an impact, and we need you. Clinical research, there's a spot for everyone, no matter your background, no matter if you have a degree or if you don't have a degree. There's a place for you if you want to help people and make an impact in the clinical research industry.
I love that you said that because people think it's not for me, or I don't have the qualifications, or I'm not this, I'm not that. You just have to show up. The number one thing is just is show up, and there's so many wonderful resources and mentors and sisters in that group who are willing to share what they know, share what they learn, so you don't have to go through the same things they went through. And it's such a safe space that I have found as a member that it feels like a space where people can really come and learn about what this work is, how to do it, how to get that bag, how to help your community, like all of it. There's no part of it that's left out. So, if you're thinking about it, don't think it's not for you. It really is.
Oh, great. This is such a great discussion. This is my purpose. So I'm so appreciate you guys doing this for us. And we're actually going to do a special report on Sunday on when we trial on our research, a clinical trial special report. We're going to do a special episode of Black Doctor on blackdoctor.org on Tuesday, Mo, for Black Women's Health at 6:00 on Tuesday. And we're going to do more talk about clinical trials next week. So we're going to be on this bandwagon. It's Clinical Trials Month. The 20th Friday is International Clinical Trials Day. So I'm having a dance party at my house. If anyone wants to come over. But we're going to keep beating this drum. And you guys, thank you for what you do. And you have to come back and talk about this more. And I'm going to put all this, edit this and put all these little videos on our website, because you're saying everything that needs to be heard. And our families just need to know about it. Need to know about it well before they need one. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you for your passion and your commitment. Absolutely.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, we'll do it again because we need you. We need you to say all these things you're saying, and we gotta save our babies. We gotta save our families and our families.
We'll save ourselves. That's right.
Save ourselves. Yeah.
Well, so Ricky, if you need us, Black women, if you need us to show up to any events, be involved more in the community, you let me know. We have chapters pretty much almost everywhere. So there are members that our North Carolina chapter has 800 members alone.
Oh, wow. All right. So we're going to 10 cities with our when we trial event. So you be careful what you ask for.
Hey, I'm ready. I might even fly in. I might even fly in until you tell me where you at. I will be there.
We got you. Yeah. We'll take you up on it for sure. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you, Amgen. Thank you, Genentech.
Yeah, we hope it's been relatable and reliable and real. That's what we set out to do every Wednesday night here on blackdoctor.org. And we are so grateful for that platform to do it. So the doctor's in. See you next week. See you Sunday.
See you Sunday. Breasty Love. Sunday at 3:00. Black Doctor Live, Sunday, 3:00 Eastern time. Breasty Live. We're going to talk more clinical trials. You guys come with us.
Okay.
Breasty Love. Take care. Bye. Blessings.
Bye-bye.
Bye.